There are two promises God made to Abraham. What are they? They are the promise to give him descendants and the promise to give him land. When God called Abraham, he promised these two things. However, as we read through Genesis, we can see that God fulfills these promises very slowly, according to his own timing. When was the promise of descendants fulfilled? It was fulfilled about 25 years after Abraham left his homeland. In the year Abraham turned 100, God began to fulfill his promise of descendants by giving him a son named Isaac as a gift. Still many more years were needed to gain numerous descendants. Perhaps about 20 years passed after that. Then God commanded Abraham to offer back to him the gift he had given as a sign of the promise, Isaac. It's a truly heartless and difficult situation. How was Isaac obtained? Wasn't he the son he barely received at the age of 100? Yet God tells him to offer Isaac as a burnt offering. While God's command might seem cruel, we can see it as God testing Abraham's faith. How does Abraham respond to this test? He does not choose the gift, Isaac, but chooses God, the giver of the gift. By doing so, Abraham passes God's test. This is how Abraham's faith deepens and his relationship with God becomes stronger. God's tests for Abraham continue. Now, through what will God test him? He tests him through the land that he promised to give along with descendants. How will Abraham pass the test this time? Verse 1 of the text records that Abraham's wife Sarah ended her life at the age of 127. Sarah, who had enjoyed and received God's blessings with Abraham, met her death. The text, uncharacteristically, provides relatively detailed information about this woman's death, recording where Sarah passed away and how old she was at the time. This shows Sarah's high status as an ancestor of Israel, despite being a woman. Verse 2 records that Abraham mourned and wept for Sarah. How painful must Abraham's heart have been sending his wife Sarah off before him? How sorrowful must it have been for Abraham to send away his beloved wife, who had journeyed with him from their hometown of Ur of the Chaldees? Notably, Abraham and Sarah had been promised numerous descendants and a vast land from God. But what was their reality? Even though Sarah had died, the reality he faced was that he did not own even a single plot of land to bury her. How heartbreaking that must have been. After a lifetime of hardship together, looking only to God's promise and running the race, trusting only in that promise, how exhausting and sorrowful it must have been to realize he hadn't obtained even one plot of land for her to be buried in by the time of her death. In the end, Sarah died without seeing the promise of receiving the land fulfilled. Abraham must have been in even greater pain, not only because his wife Sarah died before him, but because she died without seeing God's promise of land, and without securing a single plot for her burial. Another test had come to Abraham. In Genesis 22, God tested Abraham regarding his descendants by demanding he offer Isaac. Now in Genesis 23, amidst the situation of Sarah's death, God is testing Abraham's faith through the test of the land. How will Abraham pass this test? Setting his grief aside, Abraham goes to the local inhabitants, the Hittites, to purchase a burial site for Sarah. When it says Abraham went to the Hittites, it could refer to a council of their elders, or perhaps to a single chieftain-like figure. In any case, Abraham is approaching someone with enough power to propose and decide on this land transaction. Verse 4 says, "I am a foreigner and a stranger among you. Sell me some property for a burial site here so I can bury my dead." Abraham is showing the Hittites his intention to purchase the land. Abraham was a very wealthy man who had amassed great possessions. However, he was still just an outsider who did not own a single plot of land. He needed land to bury Sarah. In the ensuing conversation you can see a Hittite referring to Abraham as "my lord," which suggests Abraham had maintained a deep relationship with them over time. The Hittites show some generosity to Abraham, with whom they had a good relationship. They tell him to choose a good plot of land in his site and hold Sarah's funeral there. However, the Hittites' generosity meant he could use their land for the burial, not that they would transfer ownership of the land. So Abraham attempts to make a purchase once more. In verses 7 to 9, you can see Abraham's determination to acquire the land. Abraham wants to purchase a plot of land where he can claim permanent ownership, not just a temporary place to keep Sarah's body. In the text, we can see Abraham's firm resolve to obtain the land. The text says Abraham bowed down before the Hittites. Bowing down implies he is making a significant plea, and if you look at verse 9, his desire to own the cave of Machpelah is evident as he shows his willingness to pay the full price. What does it mean to pay the full price? It means he has no intention of negotiating or haggling over the price. It means, I will give you whatever you ask for, whatever the cost may be, I will pay it in full. You can feel Abraham's strong determination to possess that land. The owner of the land, Ephron son of Zohar, happened to be present at that place. Abraham is showing a powerful will to buy the land from Ephron, the owner of the cave of Machpelah. How do you view this behavior from Abraham? God had promised to give him the land, yet by the day Sarah died, he had not given him a single plot to bury her body. In response, Abraham is trying to purchase land to bury Sarah. The question is this action by Abraham an act of faith or an act of faithlessness? What do you think? In conclusion, Abraham's attempt to purchase land to bury Sarah can be seen as a choice of faith. You might ask, if God promised to give the land, why is he faithlessly trying to buy it with money? That's not it. It is because he believed God's promise to give the land that he resolved to pay any price, not considering the money a waste at all. He is paying the price because he believes in God's promise to give the land. There is a common mistake we make in our life of faith while anticipating God's work. It is the attitude that because God is working, we don't need to make any effort or pay any price. We just need to receive, to wait passively. Is that truly a sign of trusting in God's work? If we trust in God's work, we must also work. We must make an effort. At a church I previously served, I heard an associate pastor say something during a conversation. He said we shouldn't sing the hymn, "The Lord is working, the Lord is working." Why? Because he said, if we sing that hymn too much, the congregation members won't work since God is the one working. Of course, this was said as a joke to get a laugh. But there is a sharp point within that statement. If we trust in God's work, we must also work. If we believe in God's promise, we must actively participate in that covenant. It's not that we don't need to evangelize because we believe God will save a soul. It's that we evangelize even more fervently because we believe God will save a soul. It's not that we just sit back with our mouths open waiting for persimmons to fall from the tree because God has gifted us heaven. Like the farmer who sold all his possessions to buy a field, we must strive with our entire lives to enjoy and possess that kingdom. Jesus said, "The kingdom of heaven suffers violence, and the violent take it by force." Abraham buys the cave of Machpelah by paying a price. Abraham didn't simply buy a cave for Sarah's burial. Abraham bought the future hope of God's work by paying a price. Are there any among us who confess to believe in God's promise but are merely waiting passively? Are you just waiting with your mouth open for the persimmon to fall from the tree? Of course, there are times when waiting is necessary, but if we believe in God's promise, we must participate in the work of fulfilling the covenant by actively obeying His word. Because we believe in God's work of salvation, we must evangelize all the more earnestly. Because we believe in God's work, we must serve our families, our ministry teams, and our church diligently. To enjoy God's promise, we must do our part in life, take responsibility, and pay the appropriate price. I pray that this morning we may reflect on what areas of our lives require our obedience, decision, effort, and payment to fulfill God's promises. And I sincerely hope you will begin this day and this week by asking for the strength and courage to accomplish that work.